Friends, enemies, innocent bystanders. Sometimes you can convince 20 women to go on a date with you and record it. Other times you get friend zoned by 3 women in a week. That's right, today we have another free-for-all getting red pilled on the red pill. In this video, we'll be talking about the red pill, which is of course where you pretend like you want to learn Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu because the idea just came to you one day. That's right, SMV stands for sad man vaping and is entirely unrelated to female hypergamy, whatever that means. This is coming to you in 3 parts. Part 1 is origin story. So, I don't want this to be a performative male video where I belittle the red pill movement while casually mentioning the vast amounts of feminist literature I read or the fact that I'm 6'2". In fact, I actually think there are some things, if not a lot of things, that the red pill movement gets right. But I want to focus on 2 things that I think are problematic and have been personally harmful to me. Number 1, the red pill movement encourages you to wear a mask, metaphorically speaking, and number 2, it fuels intersexual animosity. But first, let's start with a story. Girl 1. After 5 dates, says our relationship feels like hanging out with a friend. Girl 2 rates our date an 8.5 out of 10, then clarifies that this rave review was not romantic in nature. And as a quick aside for context, I should note that I have a podcast where I recorded some of my dates with permission. You can click the link in the description if you want to listen. Anyways, girl 3 listens to my podcast and says that meeting up would feel like talking with a nice guy, which is probably not a euphemism for sexy and mysterious. Guys, that's 3 friend zones in 7 days. It's like the NBA three-point contest, but for celibacy, and I'm Steph Curry. Guys, regardless of how much stock you think I should put into this feedback, or even the veracity of any one of these statements, this was honestly rough. Let's just say that this cow has seen greener pastures. Moo! Anyways, I may talk about this incident a bit more later, but I walked away from this feeling convinced that there was some fundamental flaw in me. One that if left unchecked would see the Kenworthy name snuffed out by platonic fatalism, the embers dying in the absence of the spark. And I understand that if I were a better person, I wouldn't let this get to me and I would just have moved on, but I'm not, you know? So I just got to deal with what I'm working with. So in the depths of my despair, cursed by the algorithm, one solution kept coming to me. Do you know what YouTube thought I needed at this point? It thought I needed a pair of floating hands using graphs showing me how to be less beta. Add in some other talking heads from the same sphere, and suddenly I'm being influenced by the manosphere et al. Which brings us to part 2, follow the white rabbit. So the videos that kept popping into my feed told me that the reason I got friend zoned was because I need to be more confident. But this is weird to me because I already felt very strong in this area, which ironically eroded my confidence even more. I was told that I needed to build up this persona that was attractive to women and embody this person who was not me. The problem is, I started trying to become someone who I wasn't. And even if you succeed at that, whoever you're with isn't attracted to you, they're just attracted to the mask that you've put on. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't strive to make improvements in your life, but those improvements should be geared to helping you better become the person who God made you to be, rather than becoming a false shadow of yourself. The Catholic mystic Thomas Merton frames this masking in an existential light. He says, "We may wear now one mask and now another, and never, if we so desire, appear with our own true face. But we cannot make these choices with impunity. Causes have effects. And if we lie to ourselves and to others, then we cannot expect to find truth and reality whenever we happen to want them." So I think that maybe a big problem with the red pill videos and red pill adjacent videos is not necessarily any particular piece of advice that they give, though, some of it certainly is bad. I think it's more like it made me feel encouraged to become someone who I'm not. And I think that putting too much of an emphasis on these videos for me led to an analysis paralysis for me. There's an element of overcoaching. I often found myself overanalyzing dates in real time, spending my mental energy reading into the subtext of what was happening rather than being present with the woman before me. And I should also make the point that a lot of these videos are promoting a dating strategy geared towards guys who want to get with many women. But in my situation where I'm dating ultimately to find a wife, that's less relevant. If I get rejected by someone who isn't a good match for my personality or who doesn't like me for me, that's a good thing because I wouldn't want to be with that person long term anyways. So here's a good visualization, I think. On the left, you have just be yourself. But it's like the version where it's like, don't make any changes, just be debaucherous, like you're left to your own worst instincts, right? And then you have ostensibly a higher IQ take, which is you need to curate an experience. Women aren't rejecting you, they're rejecting the experience they're having with you. But basically, it's saying like tailor your personality so that other people like you. And ultimately, that's going to be dissatisfying. And then on the right, you have just be yourself. But this is taken to be the person who God made you for who God made you to be, and trust that the right person will like you for you and be willing to come along for this ride. This brings us to part 3, hating is bad. So moving on to the second reason why I think red pill content is toxic is that it fuels intersexual animosity. I think it's very easy for red pill videos to engender hatred towards women because it sees romance as a game that is unfair, and the men in these videos tend to blame that inequity on women, viewing them as enemies. This actually became very apparent to me on a podcast date that I went on. So I did this segment where I asked her, finish my sentence, women in general, which this in hindsight was actually more chaotic than I intended. And she said, are amazing. And I'm like, okay, that's great. I agree with you. But then we kind of discussed this for a little bit. And I'm like, okay, would you say the same thing about men? And words were exchanged, but the conclusion of this exchange was essentially that her answer was no. This was really odd to me, seeing as that she was trying to date, well, men, right? But this tendency actually makes a lot of sense to me from a psychological perspective for 2 reasons, which I think are both important to understand. So first of all, we like people who are like us. It's easier to empathize with people who have similar experiences as us. And it's also just natural because of that to have more empathy towards the same sex and to be more critical of the opposite sex. The other reason I think is a consequence of heterosexuality. So I'll use myself as an example, seeing as that I am a heterosexual. So I've been both helped and harmed in significant ways by both men and women. However, the most emotionally salient of these 4 categories is the harm that I've experienced from women. So it makes sense in a way for me to focus on this harm and to hate women as a result. But really, that's just a psychological bias. Like, I've been harmed by men too. It just doesn't stick out as much to me because romantic feelings were not involved because I'm straight. But I think this is so helpful to understand because it shows reasons why we might be biased towards viewing the other sex in a negative light. But it's so ridiculous to want to date people of the opposite sex while holding a negative view of that sex. And becoming too entrenched in the Machiavellian analysis of dating and romance that is so common in red pill adjacent videos can easily elicit this view. Also, referring back to part 2, hatred of the opposite sex can be another form of masking where you embrace this philosophy of women are evil because that's easier to embrace than your own hurt. And that, my friends, is our free-for-all. In conclusion, in summary, red pill content can promote an inauthenticity of self, and it can lead men to view women negatively, which is bad for a variety of reasons. Anyways, I hope this video was helpful for you. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comment section below. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and that's all I've got for today. Thank you for watching.